This is the Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio. Thank you for joining us. At any time, you can email the show at messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at Israel Sports and News Radio at gmail.com. A lot going on in terms of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activity. That really is not a new story, but there are new elements in this story. And on the line right now to discuss this is Israel Sports and News Radio's North American correspondent, Leslie Ann Stoffel. Leslie, how you doing out there?
Good, Ari. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and we appreciate you being on in this late hour. And you are live from Canada, and it's interesting to have you on because there was something very scary going on in Canada regarding basically a situation where in Vancouver there were people demonizing Jews. Tell us a bit what happened.
Well, I was told by I'm kind of involved with the Jewish Defense League here in Canada, and whenever there's an event going on, they let me know if it's in Vancouver, and I go. And they said there was going to be a pro-Hamas rally downtown, and basically what they were doing were they were commemorating the war with Israel. They call it the war with Israel against Gaza. And what it was a chance for them to demonize Israel and make Israel, completely wrong in the whole thing. They did not hold Hamas to account for one thing at all. Basically, they had quite a crowd there. I noticed. I couldn't really get how many people exactly were there, but it looks like there were about, 50 or maybe even a little more. And they had huge Palestinian flags blowing in the wind there in downtown Vancouver. So these are like terrorist Hamas flags, basically. They had big signs saying Israel needs to stop the war against Gaza. They were handing out pamphlets that had all these lies and everything on them. And, the guy handed me one, and I was so annoyed that I didn't take it, and I wish I would have now. But anyway, I didn't take it, but I could see that it was, free Palestine on it, and they were yelling out free Palestine, and Palestine will be free, and that whole thing, which is, we all know that is a euphemism for the Jews will be, annihilated and pushed out of Israel, and so-called Palestine will be free, because they see, Hamas especially sees, and the PA does as well, they just hide it a little bit better, but they see all of Israel, not just Gaza, not just Judea and Samaria, but Tel Aviv, Haifa, Akko, like everywhere. They see all of that as so-called Palestine. And so that's what they're fighting for. That's what the Hamas charter says that they are to do, is to rid the land of the Jews. And so basically the JDL were there. We were on the other side of the street from them, and there were police there. Now, when I go to these things, I don't necessarily like to put myself out in the, I'm just a little bit of a type of person that doesn't really like to put themselves front and center in all these things. But what happened is the guys had the JDL guys, they had one of those like bullhorn, foghorn things, and I thought, I didn't think I'd ever speak into one of these things, but I actually did, because I was so annoyed at the lies and the stupidity coming out of this. And it's what it is it's anti-Semitism cloaked in pro so-called Palestinian propaganda, basically. So I took the foghorn and I started yelling through this foghorn truthful statements about what really happened in that war, which was the Hamas started the war. They built $1 million tunnels and did not allow their people to use those tunnels for shelter. They used them as human shields, actually, and made them stay where they were, and so that they would be killed. And I said, Hamas commits double war crimes by targeting Israeli civilians and holding their own people as human shields. I basically went on and on. I said that there are this was actually put out by the Palestinian Authority that I read in an article a couple of weeks ago. There are actually 1,700 millionaires in Hamas in Gaza from the money that they've stolen from their own people. So basically, I was just saying all these things out really, really loud in downtown Vancouver, and people were like, the people around who heard this, like, they were shocked. I mean, I could see people's faces, or they were just like, oh my gosh. And, the other side, I could see them, when you can tell, like, they were like, oh, they weren't, they were surprised that I was giving these talking points in really clear and concise manners. And I was, speaking to every one of their points and doing this. And, you know, I know now that by doing this, I'm putting a target on myself. Like, the more you go out there, the harder it is. And I basically said also that this is the global Islamic Jihad. This is what Hamas is. And I called these people useful idiots for the global Islamic Jihad. And I can imagine that just your average everyday person doesn't want to get involved in this, because you are putting yourself out there for attacks. There were people attacked last summer in Toronto and Calgary. They were actually physically attacked. So we have an Al-Quds Day coming up here on July 18th with the JDL, and I'm going to go and I'll speak again through the bullhorn, whatever. There will be police there, but at the same time, there could be violence. You just don't know. But then at the same time, on the other hand, what I say is, we are living. This is so crucial and so scary to me. We are living in 1930s Germany again, where people are being intimidated to not speak up. The anti-Semitism is rising very, very fast, and it's becoming it's becoming socially acceptable to hate the Jews and hate Israel, which means hating the Jews, because it's the Jewish state. So it's just boiling and boiling and boiling more and more and more. But from my perspective, the type of person that I am, I just can't sit by and watch this happen. I have to say something.
Now let me just cut you off right there. I'm curious, with this protest, you're on the bullhorn, and you obviously, there are people that are fighting this protest. I'm curious, because you're talking about the element of violence. Did you feel yourself that this could turn ugly, that this could get violent?
Well, that's why I when I asked the guys, the JDL guys, I said, how come we're not on the other side of the street with them? And they said, because it could, they could attack us. So that's why we stayed on the other side of the street. Like, there was a whole big boulevard between us. But I think that had we been over there, it very well could have. I mean, our guys were not violent, but I've seen the other side turn violent. And so, yeah, these things do turn violent. I've seen them turn violent. And so that's why I feel a little trepidation to doing this. But then at the same time, like I say, we cannot stand by and watch this happen. There's just no other choice. We don't have a choice here. We have to say something, and we have to do something. There was actually a lady, and there was these people from Israel actually came by us as we were doing this, and it was a lady and her husband and I guess their friend, and they looked to be in their late 50s, early 60s or something. And so they were talking with us, and her husband had actually worked in Sderot, where the rockets come over. And so I was talking to her a bit, and we were talking. She said, I know this is all lies, because so they went over to the other side to try to talk to these people, and I saw them, but they really didn't get anywhere. I mean, after a while they left. You see, now this is the thing with this type of crowd. These are already the brainwashed anti-Semites who are not going to change their minds. But what I'm hoping to do is, if I'm speaking through this bullhorn, foghorn thing, whatever you call it, to that hopefully people on the street who are just walking by or getting one of their flyers and or listening to the lies that they're talking about, that this will counter and they'll pick it up in their mind and they'll say, oh, okay, well, there's two different narratives going on here. Which one, is right? I don't know. I don't know if it will ever really make much difference. You never can tell. You never know. But yeah, these things are, it is becoming a dangerous situation, Ari. It is. But like I say, again, we don't have a choice. We really, really don't.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio, and my guest is Leslie Ann Stoffel. We're talking about what occurred in Montreal, an anti-Israel protest, and you said there's going to be something coming up July 14th?
It was in Vancouver.
Sorry, Vancouver, sorry.
Yeah.
I mixed up because I'm a big hockey fan, that's why. Vancouver Canucks, Montreal Canadiens.
Yes, exactly. Me too.
Don't want to disrespect Montreal here. That was Vancouver. But there is something coming up July 14th you were talking about?
Yeah, July the 18th.
18th.
They're supposed to be having another rally downtown for the Al Quds Day. So these are all the, pro.
What is Al Quds? Al Quds, what is that exactly?
Yeah, Al Quds. That's the Arab way of saying Jerusalem. So they are it's their day of trying to take the Jerusalem from the Jews, basically, is what that is. They're celebrating their hopeful takeover of Jerusalem through this celebration, from what I gather.
It's kind of like on Yom Ha'atzmaut, the people who do not recognize Israel call it Nakba Day, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's like that. It's a usurping of the Jewish identity and sovereignty over Jerusalem and trying to overlay the Islamic identity over that and take it over.
Okay, so it's, for the people who aren't the biggest Israel fans, it's a way of basically denying Israel's right to exist and Jerusalem's that Israel has sovereignty over Jerusalem, I should say.
Yes, yeah, that's what it is.
All right,
it's
so
an undermining kind of thing. Yeah.
That's July 18th. Where is that going to take place?
Downtown somewhere. I don't know the exact location yet. When I find out, I'll let you know.
All right, so we'll keep everybody posted on that, and all our listeners and audience in Canada that are pro-Israel. We need you to go out there and stand up. Leslie will be there with the bullhorn. We gotta take care of business. Now, that story is still up in the air. We could fight something about that. Something that's very sad, and we can only fight part of it, is there's a report through your side, Real Clear Israel, about Hamas refusing to return the bodies of 2 Israeli soldiers who were killed last summer. Tell us about that very sad story. Obviously, in Judaism, the body is sacrosanct, very holy. We got to have a proper burial. And many times the Israeli government has sacrificed and released many, many terrorists just to get back a body because it's so important. And Hamas is not doing this, not releasing the bodies. Tell us a bit more about the story.
Yeah, well, this is my site is therealclearisrael.org, and I work for United with Israel, so I post a lot of United with Israel stuff on my Facebook page and on my webpage and things like that. So this actually came from the United with Israel writers, and it is a report. Hamas refuses to return the bodies of the Israeli soldiers, and it's Israel reportedly contacted Hamas via a European mediator in an effort to retrieve the bodies of the 2 IDF soldiers killed in last summer's war, but Hamas has refused to comply. And it says that Hamas reportedly turned down a request by Israel to return the abducted bodies of the soldiers from last summer, and it's from the Turkish Anatolian news agency, quoted a senior Hamas official through an unnamed European mediator that they are demanding 70 prisoners to be released in exchange for the bodies of the soldiers. And as you can imagine, Israel is reticent to do that because from the Shalit deal in 2011, had to arrest a lot of those prisoners that were released in that deal and put them back in prison because they were going back into terrorist activities, and it puts Israelis in danger. So what the defense minister said here, it's obvious to us that Oren's body is being held by Hamas, and we're doing everything we can to return it. There have been previous reports of Israeli overtures to Hamas to negotiate on the return of the bodies as part of a long-term ceasefire with the terror organization. So again, it's one of those situations where it's such an impossible scenario that Israel is going to have a very difficult time getting through and trying to find some kind of answer to it, because they're in a great difficulty not getting the bodies back because of what you just said about how the holiness of the body and everything, but they're also in great difficulty if they have to release a bunch of prisoners, dangerous prisoners, and put everybody else in danger. So it's another very serious catch-22 situation that Israel finds himself in on many, many times as they deal with global Islamic Jihad that goes by the name of Hamas in this case.
Yeah, and you look at the Gilad Shalit deal, that was around Sukkot 2011, and a lot of people, myself included, were very amazed, very happy Gilad was freed. He was captive for years, and then after this deal, you realize that about half of the people released committed more crimes, and also the terrorists that were released, it wasn't like they did small crimes. I mean, you had murders, you had the Sbarro bombing, and that family of those victims left Israel because they were so insulted. Yeah, they were so insulted. So these things aren't so simple. A lot of times people say, hey, make the deal, but you got to factor other things involved. It's very, very complicated. I do not want to be in that position to have to decide anything like that. But we do got to report on it, and we want people to understand what exactly the situation is. Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest is Leslie. Let's talk about an initiative that France is doing to kind of shelve some things that are regarding Israel and their relationship with Israel. So tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting, Ari. I'm glad you brought it up because it makes my mind start to think, like, what's going on behind the scenes here, as France has been subject to the most disgusting and deplorable terror attacks lately. So here's what the report from UnitedWithIsrael.org says. The French are reportedly backing down from plans to force Israel into making concessions to the Palestinians, which would endanger its security. Now, isn't that interesting? So the foreign minister of the Palestinian Authority, Riyad al-Maliki, said that France was backtracking from plans to advance a draft resolution on renewing Palestinian-Israeli peace efforts to the UN Security Council, the UNSC. So I guess they're not wanting to set this kind of precedent with a terror gang at the UN. I'm just speculating here. I don't know this. I find this actually fascinating as how Western countries now are going to start to backtrack and tiptoe and backpedal as they start to feel the wrath of global Islamic Jihad more and more and more on their shores. And are they going to be so eager to put Israel, Israel is on basically the front line. Israel holds the line there that keeps the global Islamic Jihad from getting over to Europe. So is France worried that ISIS is going to take over that territory and plow their way through and take over the massive territory in Europe? Who knows? But this is actually fascinating to think about, and I might even write some kind of an article on this, because this is really, really getting interesting here, Ari. And of course, it doesn't say why they've made this decision, but I'm just speculating here. And so it says that al-Maliki said to avoid embarrassment, France had suggested forming a negotiations support committee as an alternative, although al-Maliki said that the role such a committee would play was not clear. And it says also that al-Maliki is wanting to reach out to New Zealand, of all places. So anyway, people, the listeners can go to the unitedwithisrael.org website. We've got a lot of really interesting stories there, so they can check the rest of that story out there if they want. And I'll just say what the Prime Minister Netanyahu said, though, at a joint press conference with the France representative in June. He stressed that peace can be achieved only through direct negotiations between the parties and without preconditions. It will not come from UN resolutions that are sought to be imposed from the outside, he said. President Abbas believes he can avoid such direct negotiations. He wants to avoid the give and take of such negotiations. So there you go. I guess Bibi also has to cover himself by saying stuff like that, because in the reality, he knows that this is not possible. Now, with the unrest and the instability in the entire region, it's just not feasible that a so-called Palestinian state can be created within Judea and Samaria. And, that's just the way it is right now. So, that's it.
All right. Again, very, very interesting times we live in. They say that's a Chinese curse, but whatever it is, that's where we're living in. Again, this has been another episode of the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest has been Leslie Ann Stoffel. She is the North America correspondent for this radio station. Leslie, great job as always. Everyone can check out her work, realclearisrael.org, and find her on Facebook, Leslie Ann Stoffel. Leslie, thank you so much. Be well.
Thanks, Ari. You too.